Please welcome the 6th Air Mobility Wing Honor Guard and tonight's National Anthem performer, Evelyn Swensson.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed?
Hello, I'm Evelyn Swensson. Now I'm going to talk about some exciting events in my life. And in 1987, there was a big parade in Philadelphia. And it was to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Constitution. And I marched in that parade for John Dickinson. Now, there were 39 signers, but they had only 38 people until they couldn't find anybody for John Dickinson because he had 2 daughters and no grandchildren. So they found me, Evelyn Dickinson Swensson, living in Wilmington, Delaware. And I was directing the first state chorus. So I already had a costume. And since I was a lateral descendant of John and could prove that through my mother's research, sent it down to Washington to be vetted. And then they said, well, can you march 2 miles, and even if it rains? And I said, yes. So it did rain, and I did march in that parade for 2 hours. But what was funny is that before that parade, there was a video made of me in Dover at John Dickinson's home because he wrote the first song published in the colonies called the Liberty Song. And I sang that song. Well, when I finished the parade, I was dripping wet, went into the hotel, and I said, oh, there I am singing on television. They said, you? I don't believe it. And what I really love is that I also have a picture of my family watching the parade. We're fortunate in our family to have a portrait of my great-grandfather, Charles Carroll Dickinson, who was born in Southwest Virginia, who was a farmer and a lawyer. Then we also have a portrait of my father, Colonel Glenn G. Dickinson, who was born on a farm, and he went to a one-room school. He went to Virginia Tech, and when he graduated, he was in the United States Cavalry. And he played polo with George Patton. And when the 2nd Armored Division was begun at Fort Benning, Georgia, there he was with George Patton again. In that meantime, he found my mother. She was teaching in a one-room school, and they were married, and they had 3 children. When I was 2 years old, and my mother said I was singing when I was standing in that chair, going like that. And then in first grade, we had that picture, and then there's a picture of me when I was 16. And a little bit about Sig's family, because we have a portrait of his great-grandfather who came from Sweden, who spoke 6 languages, who was a brilliant scholar. He founded a church in Illinois, near Rock Island, Illinois, and he didn't have any money. He wrote a letter to Jenny Lind, the Swedish Nightingale. She gave him the money to build that church. His father, Earl Swensson, was a DuPont executive and then was on loan to the government, and he was in charge of the Hanford Project, which made plutonium for the atomic bomb. Sig's mother was named Viola. He had a sister named Zell. And here they are in one picture when he was 4 and in first grade when he was 6 before he went into the Navy. Went to the Navy when he was 17. At 19, he had a degree in engineering. He was an ensign in the Navy and the war was over. Now, I was going to Hollins College to major in music, and I got my degree at age 20. Then I had a very big decision to make, because this handsome teacher of engineering at Virginia Tech, who had been the #1 engineer after he was in the Navy, in thousands of veterans who came back to go to school there, and he wanted to marry me. But I said, well, I already have a scholarship to Juilliard. And he said, well, you'll have to do some thinking about that because I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years, and if you go to New York, you will not come back the same girl that I know today. And I liked that song, you know, she shall have music wherever she goes, and I decided to get married. I knew that I would have music wherever I went, and which I did. We lived in all these little towns in the South, and by the time I got to Wilmington, I had a huge list of all the things I had conducted and things I had sung in, and By that time, we had 4 children. My mother, besides teaching in that one-room school, she also taught swimming. And in 1924, she was head of waterfront at a camp for girls run by Sullins College. And I say that because when our children were old enough, Karen and Lisa both went to that same camp. And because I had been there as a counselor also. My son, John, was a very fine golfer. He won the DuPont Open when he was 18, and again at 34. Our oldest boy is a surgeon in Oregon. And when he was younger, he loved hunting with his dad, pheasants, and he had a lot of bird dogs that they loved, Brittany Spaniels. We raised our children in this beautiful home in Chadds Ford. Now they've all gone to beautiful careers. We have Lisa as the director of the Hickory Museum of Art, and Karen has her own business, Louisana Designs. John is selling BMWs in Tampa, Florida. Eric is a surgeon. Just last year, he was honored as the most outstanding citizen in his town in Oregon because he had brought many innovative things there, like a cancer center and dialysis center, so that people didn't have to go all the way to Portland. So it was a proud moment for us to go, and I've reinvented myself again. I'm presenting famous women for the Delaware Humanities Forum. I have 10 different women that I come and present in costume and tell their life story, such as Sophie DuPont, Jenny Lind, Mary Todd Lincoln. I had the pleasure of singing at the White House for President Bush #1, and my husband and I had our portrait made in front of the Lincoln portrait in the dining room. We put it on our Christmas card, and some people said, "Oh, we didn't know you had such a large house," not realizing it was the White House. At the Grand Opera House in Wilmington, Delaware, as director of the Family Opera Theater, I began to compose at age 65, and I've written 12 musicals, including The Enormous Egg, Anne of Green Gables, All Through the Night, Mary Higgins Clark, The Homecoming, Wind in the Willows, Secret of Nim, Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basilie Frankweiler, The Jungle Book, The Trumpet of the Swan, and Billy Lee's Washington. For 33 years, I was the director of music at Aldersgate United Methodist Church in Wilmington, Delaware. Another highlight was singing the soprano solos in the Beethoven Ninth in Rome, Italy, with the West London Symphony Orchestra. I got an email from the government of Luxembourg saying, "We would like you to come to help us celebrate the 60th anniversary of the liberation of Luxembourg by your father's unit, the 5th Armored Division." And so my sister and I went. Some famous composers who have come to Wilmington to work with me are Joe Robinette and Charles Strauss. Also from England, Brian Jakes, who wrote the Redwall series books, and Earl Hamner, who wrote The Homecoming, which was the pilot program for all those wonderful Walton stories on TV. And most of all, Giancarlo Menotti, who wrote The Boy Who Grew Too Fast for me to conduct at the Grand for Opera Delaware. When we celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary, all of our friends and family were there. And can you imagine, next month we will be celebrating our 60th anniversary. I've just been inducted into the Delaware Hall of Fame for working in Delaware as a composer and a singer and a writer. And so Governor Minner gave me the award. I recently won a medal at the Delaware Senior Olympics. And so I was the fastest 80-year-old woman and actually broke a record. A message I might leave to people is that wherever you go, you can reinvent yourself. You can always start a new project. You can always be somebody else. We have a new great-grandson, which gives me a chance to think about the future. I hope that he will always remember that freedom is not free, that somebody has to pay. I have 2 grandchildren. Eric's son and daughter are both U.S. Marines. They've both been to Iraq. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I'm reminded of what David said in the Bible, how good it was to live. I thank thee, God, that thou hast given me life. And then the angel sings, and the day shall dawn to bring a flower newly born, and that's little John Louisana. From thy stem in fullness growing, in fragrance sweet, night and morn, all thy people shall adorn, with breath of life bestowing. And the breath of life will go on from generation to generation. And I wish you a wonderful life. Thank you.
This project was made possible with training and equipment from the Learning Lab at WHYY.